I'm Emma Davis. I'm the enrollment coach for this program. We're so glad you could join us today. I think we're going to go ahead and just get started. So, Caitlin is going to introduce herself, and then I'll introduce myself and our panelists today. And then Caitlin will jump in with the first question, and we'll just trade back and forth. For our attendees, feel free to drop questions in the chat, and I will keep track of them, and we'll ask those of our panelists at the end of our conversation. And we will also you could also ask them yourself at the end. No need to put it in the chat. You're welcome to unmute at the end of the chat, but sometimes it's more comfortable just type it in so you don't forget. So, Caitlin, take it away. Introduce yourself and the program.
Hello, my name is Caitlin Roa. Sorry, titles sometimes change. I'm the program manager for the Data Science and Human Behavior Master's Program, also transitioning to Director of Corporate um, Capstone Projects, Corporate Relations Capstone Projects. Sorry, that doesn't matter. What really matters is so this program is made for social behavioral scientists that want to learn skills to analyze large sets of data. A lot of cool opportunities and a lot of cool projects come through. And so that's my role is to help folks get connected with the right project for them. Um, and then whether that's going into industry or into an academic setting. And I'm going to leave it there.
Yeah, thanks so much, Caitlin. I'm Emma Davis, and I am the enrollment coach for this program. So that means I'm the person you would talk to if you're curious about is the program the right fit for you? You can ask me questions about the curriculum, about the application, and tell me about your background and whether or not you fit in. And this is a super accessible program for folks looking to get into the data science field. But I always like to tell people, even though it's a program that almost anyone could apply to, someone like me would not be a good fit. So, I'm not someone that's interested or skilled in analytical thinking. And so you want to make sure that you have that real passion for that area. And we would be happy to chat with you about whether or not the program is the right fit. So we're so excited today in our program pop in to be talking to folks who are working in the data science industry. And we're joined by two of our alums from the program, Madison and Andy. Andy is a senior analyst with corporate safety data analytics with United Airlines, and Madison is a data analyst at Wisconsin Physician Services. This is a health solutions company that's located right here in Madison. And Brian is also working here in Madison with Epic Systems Corporation. He is an implementation consultant for analytics and generative AI. Sorry. So Caitlin is going to just ask us the first question, and we may not get through all the questions that we sent to you, panelists, but we're going to hopefully get some good conversation about your roles.
Thanks, Emma. So, what we want is for you guys to introduce yourselves and briefly describe your current role and share your path into behavioral data science, as well as share the kinds of data science challenges that you tackle. Let's go with Madison, Andy, then Brian.
All right, so I'm Madison. I work at WPS, which is Wisconsin Physician Services. It is a Medicare administrative contractor. So what that means is we're contracted with the U.S. government to process all the claims in like Nebraska, Kansas, Missouri, Michigan, Indiana, some Midwest states. And what I do as an analyst is look at those claims to see if there's any fraud, waste, and abuse on an institutional level and a provider level. Um, that's the overarching theme given the current administration. But in the past, there's been work done on like preventative medicine and ways to like increase claim utilization. Um, to improve like the health of our beneficiaries. My segue into data science, though, from behavioral science, was basically started with this program. I got my bachelor's in psych and transitioned to learning these analytical skills through this master's program and was able to do some hands-on research with a professor. And yeah, one of the biggest challenges I would say is working with stakeholders who don't have analytical backgrounds and not when they don't necessarily know what they want. And usually they have differing opinions on what they think they want. So I'd say that's the biggest challenge is taking what their vision is and then making it real in ways that are plausible.
Thank you, Madison. Andy?
Oh, Andy, it looks like it didn't unmute you. There we go. Oh, Brian, why don't you jump in while Andy tries to solve that, and we'll get back to her.
All right, sure. Hi, folks. I'm Brian. Excuse me. So I work for Epic, healthcare software company here in Madison, and I work on the implementation division, which means I'm working with our new clients and helping them set the system up, and I do project management and technical consulting within that role. And I work specifically with uh, analytics and value from data is sort of a phrase we use. How can they leverage our system to get value for their business, value for their patients? Um, and my counterparts at the hospitals and organizations I work with are the executive team and different directors. So I work with like chief medical informatics officers or chief operations officers, chief finance officers, and really it's about how we can leverage data that we capture to improve. For them to understand their business first and foremost, understand what's going on the ground. So is the data reflecting reality and can I interpret and understand those signals? And then taking the signals into opportunities for improvement, opportunities for learning. We use a term a lot in the industry in healthcare and analytics, which is a learning health system model, which is can you use analytics to understand what's happening and then process improve on top of that? And so there's a lot of opportunity in my role to see data being used for different reasons. It could be used for retrospective research, like clinical trials or observational research, or it can be used just to understand, how many patients do we have in the hospital, and uh, do we need to clear out beds because we don't have enough nurses staffing? So that more the operations, day-to-day operations. I think that's a concept I didn't really understand when I was doing my own undergraduate research when I actually got a bachelor's degree in psychology as well. Um, and then got on the job training to learn some of this more analytics and data science stuff. So we get to work with a lot of different types of stakeholders, a lot of different um, scenarios in which data would be useful. And the challenge is, I kind of alluded to this earlier. One of the main challenges is how do we get stakeholders to really trust that the data that they're seeing is valid and represents reality in a way that will actually benefit them and allow them to take some action on it.
Thank you, Brian. Andy, how's your sound going, you think?
So much better. Okay.
Great.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I have a bachelor's degree in psychology. I spent like 3 years as a medical researcher after that. Um, and then pivoted and yeah, went into this program. I also don't really have an analytical brain, or I thought I didn't. Um, and it turns out that like you learn it along the way. um, so the role that I'm in is a senior data analyst in corporate safety at United Airlines, and it's a pretty big role. Like there are a lot of different aspects to it. So At United, there are 12 different divisions of safety, or departments rather. There's two, we split it up. So I have 6 and somebody else has 6. And then, yeah, there's stakeholders for each one. So like a division that I can give an example of is corporate medical. And so they do all of the, like drug testing and different things for like all employees. We do in-flight, so that's going to be anything that happens in the air in an aircraft, and then also just overall like aircraft. I've been working on this project for like 6 months about hot aircraft or cabins, like if you get in and it's way too hot, trying to figure out what that is. So I primarily from the program use like SQL and statistics, and those like really pushed me into this role. And in my interview, I talked a lot about how like with psychology and with this data, like this type of data, it's super messy and it tends to be really big. And so I think that that's a really, kind of easy way to fit into that. So yeah, it's a wide ranging field, I guess. And we have, I feel like one thing that I say is we're like consultants for all of these different divisions, but the difference is that we do the analytics as well. Challenges, what both Madison and Brian said, is getting people to believe you. And it's another thing I talked about in my interview, which is like you tell the story whether people like it or not. And that might come back with like, dude, there are just not that many hot cabins, like, or I don't know, how to help you with this, or this thing isn't working. And then also finding data. And I don't know if it's just because it's a really big company, but I spend a lot of time like searching down data sets and trying to find data that actually works for us. And so that can take a long time. And that's something else that you have to communicate to stakeholders. So yeah, that's a like very long-winded answer to that question.
No, that was great, Andy. Thank you. And I think you've touched a little bit on our next question. So I'm just going to ask this question and see who wants to jump in. What technical and non-technical skills do you use the most in your role?
So I actually just recently switched over to the analytics team here. I previously worked on a different team that focused on more on the clinical trials space. And so frankly, I don't use that many technical skills right now. I do have some experience with SQL and Microsoft SQL Server. But for me, it's more marrying the understanding of hospital operations at varying degrees with good understanding of our software and how the software works. With like a very, I can go a little bit deep on the technical side, enough to probably hand things off to somebody else if I need to. But my breadth of knowledge on the operational side, combined with that technical knowledge, is really what allows me to, I guess, connect the dots. Like I'm good at connecting, hey, there's this business need, and I understand that business need deeply, and I can build relationships with the business owners or the stakeholders. And then I understand the software and the back-end databases well enough that I know how to give somebody a head start who's more technical. I can really hand the problem off to them and give them, instead of starting from home plate, they're starting from second base, right? Like if anyone's a baseball fan, it's like extra innings, right? They already have a man on second, and it's easier to knock in that run. So that yeah, and then I guess also on the technical side, just like basic understanding of database structure is helpful. So like the difference between a two-dimensional relational database versus like a star schema type of database structure, those are also helpful things to just be aware of. on like how like why different database structures might be useful from an efficiency perspective once you're getting to the levels of big data like that starts to become relevant and important.
I'll add that I use a lot of Power BI, which is not something I used in the program, but I took like an elective and we learned Tableau, so it was pretty easy to switch over. I find that a lot of the preferred like deliverables in my like corporate position are like Excel files, which like Andy kind of mentioned earlier, like finding data is part of the challenge a lot of the times, and like just how the reports have been done in the past is most of the time like not efficient, and it's hard to like convince them like, hey, like we should do this differently. But yeah, Power BI and Excel, I've learned how to like do DAX expressions, so that's technical skills and non-technical skills. Um, Being able to like tell a story with the data, right? And communicate like the high level insights because like the VPs don't want to hear like long-winded explanations. They just want to know like one sentence takeaways. So
I'll add one more thing. We also use PySpark a lot. I don't know if anybody's heard of that. We use it like far more than SQL, but it's basically like Python and SQL like shoved into one thing. And it was a little difficult to learn at first until you just kind of like accept it and go with the wind with what we learned in the program. Um, and in terms of the non-technical skills, I just like really want to reiterate what Madison said because I'm still struggling with that. In the program, you got to do a lot of like serious write-ups, and I think it's extremely important for understanding what you're looking at, and then you really got to take it to the next level because I tend to write out emails like 3 hours of emails and then erase like every single sentence I put after the numbers. Um, so yeah, I just wanted to shout out those two things as well. And then also, I feel like people with psych degrees tend to be like relatively personable. And I found that people in the data field kind of like when you bring that in. Okay. I don't know.
No, helpful, Andy. Thank you. Okay, how do you, it's your question, Caitlin. I'm so sorry.
It was cool. You could go. But I was gonna say to follow up, I'm gonna piggyback and then I'll go back to this other question. So I often tell people when they're worried about, like getting out in the job market and based on the foundational skills that you did learn in this program, do you feel like you could learn all the things you need to learn within like 3 weeks? For example, like Pi Spark. Did that take like 3 weeks or more? Only just that I can be more correct when I say that to people. That one's obviously specifically for you, Sarah.
Yeah. I think, sorry if I'm like misunderstanding your question. I definitely
So,
think it was
yeah.
like we also use Palantir and Foundry. Sometimes you just have to like put some affiliations aside. And so like those platforms, I think that took a while. And again, similarly to Madison, it's like figuring out how to navigate that to find the things that you like really need and go, who structured this like this? Nothing's in the right file. PySpark it kind of took a little bit longer because of the way that it's in Foundry. And yeah, I don't do any Power BI, but everybody else on my team does. And so I think I've done a good job learning, like I'll do the back end of it, of the data sets and cleaning the data and all of that. Um, but I have to have an understanding of, okay, I'm not going to aggregate this here because you're going to aggregate it in Power BI, or you don't like you hate aggregating in Power BI, so I'll do what I can here. And those are things that I think definitely took a couple of weeks. I was really scared looking at the job market. Everything looked weird. Everything, I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know if I'm good at data. And coming in, I just have had I had somebody say to me one time, like, if you don't think that you should be in this role, how did you lie and convince so many people that you do belong in this role? And that has like stuck with me for a very long time. Um, and yeah, so I think it is really easy to pivot and use those skills. And you can also always change later.
Yeah. And so many of our students come in from a non-technical background and are able to gain so much skills and knowledge in just that course of the 16 months with the program. So it is a real testament to their abilities to learn on the ground and learn quickly and put in that hard work. So I'm sure you're doing great, Andy, getting all those
Okay,
skills in.
I'll add
I
that
think we
third.
can
I'll ask
skip
that.
question 3, Caitlin.
I was just gonna think that too. I was just like, oh, let's just go with. Okay, so across the different industries and roles, what trends are you seeing right now in the data science, particularly where it intersects with human behavior, decision making, and or social impact?
To be like brief, like everything's just I'm seeing as like AI and how do we automate
Mm.
everything? So basically like instead of wasting X amount of time running monthly reports, like can we just have this done? Like we're like limited human intervention is necessary, which having like the data and analytical like background and understanding like obviously raises flags because I mean that stuff never works like seamlessly. There's always something breaking. So but yeah, I would say that's the biggest trend right now is just a desire to automate and the
Hmm.
use of like LLMs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Andy or Brian, you want to add to that?
I would agree. I think going back to what Madison said earlier, there's always going to be a need to synthesize what, as a data scientist, you might have a very deep understanding about, how did this data even get here? Like, what was the front end process for even capturing this information? And what did I have to do to clean up a data set in order to tell this story? But Madison was saying, that's usually a one sentence blurb to a VP or a director or an executive, right? And that's the thing that I think is um, consistent across every, at least every client I've worked with, is that people who are in the role of interpreting the signals that you are often crafting for them really just need to know, like, what does this say? And what action should we take? So in addition to automating using LLMs, there's always an action-oriented story about what this means and what we should do about it. And I think within the framework of where do LLMs become useful, it's often in being able to ingest, interpret, and then craft that message.
I look at Madison and I'm like, you are perfect. Like, I feel like you did like such a good job in the program. When you like after you accept, you take a like when you fill out a survey where they kind of figure out where your strengths and like weaknesses are, and then they send you information based on that. I wish that I had put a little more into that. Like I thought that I had done enough. And for me, it was technical. For me, it was like learn how to use Python in this way, learn how to use Bash in this way. Um, and I wish that I had done more of that. I wish I'd done more like LinkedIn sessions and done like a little bit more with SQL. But again, I do want to reiterate that those tools are provided to help you learn those things and to prepare. It just felt so foreign, and I was like, I'll learn it while I'm in there. And while I did, I wish that I'd had like a deeper foundation and dug a little deeper into what was provided.
I agree with Andy. I think like as soon as you're accepted, I tried to like start learning how to code because it is such a huge learning curve. That first semester, like it's bad flashbacks because it's Python like right out the gate. And so if you like watch some videos or at least like try like Hello World and stuff, like it'll come easier. Like I regret not trying to learn Python. I think R came a little easier, which is a different programming language because we had code along labs. Um, so yeah, I would definitely look into Python and SQL, like Andy said.
Did you want to talk about any trends? You didn't get a chance to touch on that question. Or
Trends, I think
was
that's
it you that talked about it and Andy didn't get to it? Yeah.
Yeah. Also AI, or
Yeah.
more automation. I will say, I think that we can get, and I don't know how much of this is Foundry. Um, I'm like, functions are doing this. Like we schedule builds. Like this is just as simple. I'm also noticing that and this might be because it's a newer department within United and Safety, the more people that find out how much we can do and what we offer, the more stakeholder meetings are showing up on my calendar where they're like, we want hard data and we want it by the end of the month. And you can do all of this. And it's like, there's four of us. Like we need a second. So that is another trend where people really want data analytics done, and quickly. And I sound like I'm like talking down on it. I'm not. It's just like a little stressful
But a
sometimes.
high demand, which is good. You're
High demand
popular.
for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thinking about that work and what you do, what part of the work do you find the most rewarding? And what has surprised you about working in data science professionally?
I think it's rewarding when you're working like directly with stakeholders and customers and having like touch points and meetings and getting like feedback. I think it's really great when you take like once you're like from idea to like deliverable, it's like rewarding. Getting there is always challenging, but I think it's really nice, especially like different departments and like different teams are like have their own challenges. And so like I prefer working with like customer service over like the finance people. And so like you'll find like teams you like working with and people that are like involved in the data and like want um to help you in the process. And so I think just working with different departments has been rewarding for me because it can get a little lonely sometimes on the back end if I'm just like coding and cleaning data all day and have no meetings. So
Yeah.
I always find it particularly rewarding when I when I work with someone who maybe doesn't fully realize the power behind data and interpreting data. And then you show it to them, and then like their eyes open wide, and they're like, "Whoa, that's so cool," or "That's amazing," or "Hey, great that the thing that you're showing me matches my understanding of what I do every day because uh, I could have told you that, but at least the data supports it, right?" So having those types of interactions are really great, and they happen not infrequently. And so and I would say like you can contrast that with working with stakeholders who really deeply understand how data can be useful and how to leverage analytics, and they just really need a technical set of people to help them. Um, and maybe that's another I was thinking about like what else could I have added to the previous question about industry trend. Another thing, and I think this was alluded to a little bit earlier as well, which is people's maturity with data and analytics from a stakeholder perspective, right? From the people who you'll be supporting, what may vary pretty drastically, and being ready to um, work in either on either side of that continuum of like, okay, this person really is going to be blown away by this, hopefully, or hey, this person does this every day, and really we're just continuing the conversation and continuing to try to optimize. That's pretty rewarding too.
Thank you.
For me, I think it's always like proving that I know what I'm doing. So like, giving a deliverable, I'm saying like, no, this is correct, like feeling really good about that type of deliverable. And then also just really being able to, they sound like so simple, but just being able to answer those questions of people who are coming to us, stakeholders that are coming to us that really don't have any idea. They just have an idea of, we want to know this thing, and being able to engage on a level that they understand, while also, the two parts of your brain of like, okay, I can talk to you really, simply about this, while also in my mind going, okay, well, what functions will I need for this? How will I make new columns? How will I clean this data? What data do we have? I find that really rewarding, just because that you're offering support and like a sigh of relief that something can be done.
It sounds like you all do a bit of like translating based on who you're talking to. And so I feel like that's going to be a huge skill for a hugely important skill for students to learn. So this is going to be sort of a combined question for alumni from this program. From your perspective, what skills or experiences best prepare you or graduate students in general for success in human-centered data science roles? And Brian, your question is similar but different. And it's, what skills or experiences do you wish early career data sciences were better prepared with? So I'll give you guys just a second to digest that. Do you want me to repeat it?
We could drop them in the chat too. I could have done that with all our questions.
So I'll just say it again. So
I,
oh, you got
sorry.
it. Go
No,
for
well,
it.
I just have the email up. I feel like
Oh,
I'm talking
yeah.
too much though, so I
You're
don't
doing great, Andy.
have. Um, yeah, I mean, I said I have it up, and I'm like, okay. Um, I genuinely feel like the write-ups in our stats classes, they were tough and very time consuming. But I feel like speaking to translating, it helped a lot, because you had to understand what was going on. You had to ask questions in labs, and then you had to do the write ups. So I think that really helped. I think I do a little less with human based stuff. The most of that comes from um, interacting with stakeholders, but I do think that is, a large part of it. Um, yeah, sorry, I'm just like rereading it. Yeah, I think that those are the biggest things, is like, the other thing with that is when you do those write-ups, it helps you further understand what's going on, because like I had to Google a sigmoid function today, and I was like, Tim would not be proud of me for this. That is okay. But once you do that, it like comes back immediately, and you're like, okay, I could explain
Yeah.
this to
Oh, yeah.
everybody
You're
on our
just
team.
squashing.
Yeah, and one thing that I do want to add really quickly that I maybe should have added earlier is our team, each of us, like I said, there's four of us, and we each have different skills. And so one person might be really strong with coding. They hired me for, more statistics, somebody else more for machine learning. And so kind of coming together with that, it goes back to translating. So
Mm.
yeah, back it into that like human translating thing.
Thanks.
I think the capstone was really good experience, and like is the closest thing to like what it's like in the industry, because you work with a team, kind of like Andy said, where everyone has like a different skill that they're like the best at. Someone on my team's like the best at Python. I've become the go-to for Power BI, even though I had like no experience with it before, but it's cool. Yeah, so the capstone was great because like you're working with the team all week, and then you meet with the stakeholder, like once a week, and so you're bringing like the takeaways, the challenges, and like the next steps. And I feel like that's something that translated well, even if it's not with the stakeholder, if it's with our boss once a week. So that experience was super helpful.
Thanks.
I think one thing I tell newer people who I'm mentoring and managing is there's really no replacement for time spent in a role and experience spent in a role. And I think a lot of times people try to brute force their way through experience in a way that is impossible to do. So I will say that sometimes it just takes time doing something, right? And getting that experience. Um, but I do think that often what I see hamper people's ability within this area is working in silos and not realizing just the bigger picture. If you take a step back, you realize that um, it's not just, hey, data is here, I retrieve data and I do some sort of function and I present it and then I'm done. But there's a story, right? There's a story behind why someone's asking for that data, what they're trying to do with it, whether or not the inputs on the front end are reliable and good or efficient, right? There might be an opportunity to improve that front end process. And so I think, the more we can have students realize that end-to-end story of like, you know, data being stored somewhere and you just going to retrieve it and presenting something is a small sliver of the total story. It's an important part. It's definitely an important part, a critical part, but there's that human narrative behind it, right? There's always usually someone trying to uh, figure something out and make some sort of improvement, and trying to optimize that end-to-end experience through automation or through Gen AI, that's really like important for people to understand.
Hmm. Well, thanks for bringing up that time put in, Brian, because one trend I've noticed in the program and watching you do your work is that not everyone is willing to put in the time, and it's not just about sitting in a role or in a classroom and like waiting for the knowledge to hit you, but the students who have been most successful in these programs are the folks who are like, I need to prepare myself for the program. I need to put in a little pre-work before the program. And you're, as you mentioned, in a new role at Epic, and it's meaning to you're putting in a little extra time. You're not waiting for it to just come naturally, but you're doing work after your work to make sure that you're fully prepared for this new role. And I would say that to any students who are thinking about this program. Absolutely, it's a program that's super accessible and you don't need the technical skills coming in. And absolutely, the program is going to come here and support you fully. But our most successful students have been those who are like, I'm going to show up fully and expect that it's going to be hard. Would you agree, Caitlin? It's a tough year.
Yes, yep. I mean, I feel like I say this a lot, but you get whatever you put in, whatever
Hmm.
you know, this program is just a program at the end of the day. It's the time that you spend on your capstone. It's the time that you spend learning in between. We have 4 week breaks in between fall and spring and between spring and summer and fall. And I find folks that take that time to like, learn Power BI, for example, or there'll be people who are interested in learning SQL before their capstone starts. And so then they do that before the capstone even starts. So yeah,
Yeah.
the program is just like I said, it's just a program. It's the effort that you put into that you're going to get out. And so
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I have the last question for you all today, which is what advice would you give to students who are still exploring their career paths and trying to decide where they might fit within the data science field? And I bet you all might have similar to the advice that I give, which is talk to people who are already doing this about the intricate details of their job. What would you all say?
Um, I would say like just go for it. I applied to a million jobs, and I think the worst thing in the world is that I ended up getting this job through networking. And there's nothing that I hate more than people telling me to do that because I'm like, I don't know how you want me to do that. But I think there are more and more people in data science. And so it wasn't a stranger, it was somebody that I knew really well saying, hey, there's a job open. And so, yeah, I would just say like apply as many places as you can with such a wide like breadth of, like there are so like I feel like all three of us do something very different and use very similar skills. Something else that I wanted to add earlier is that I end up doing a lot of work with text data that comes in uh, like from in-flight or like flight attendants and stuff. And I think that a lot of that is understanding the behavior of what they're saying. And we learned how to deal with text data, and it's like really difficult to do and to clean and to figure out the best way to do it. So I did just want to add that in. But yeah, just like talk to as many people that you already know who are in like any field of data science. And I remember saying, like, I don't know any of the skills you have. And he was like, you're not applying for my job. You're applying for a different job. So just beg, I guess.
I would yeah, I would echo that. Like, go for it. I also would say it might feel like you might have this mentality of, oh, I'm not technical enough for this, or this is an extremely technical role. And at the end of the day, you probably will learn, you'll probably be able to learn the skills that you need more easily than you think you will, or it'll come to you more naturally than you think it will. And you'll use your creativity a lot. Like this is a creative role. It's not a just like point and click role. It's figuring out and problem solving and using social skills, using creative skills. It's a lot more than just I'm sitting and I'm like crunching numbers. Um, and yeah, I think, Andy called out something really important that probably we could circle back to on the what's going on in the trends in the industry. Combining different data modalities is very, very big right now. We're not just looking at like uniformity of data, but different types of data. And so that I would add that as something to check in on.
I have nothing to add. I think they covered it pretty good.
Great. Well, we started this convo by me saying I always say this program isn't the right fit for someone like me, but I think you've all gotten me really excited about data, and maybe I could just figure it out and learn these skills, and I'm gonna take the program, Caitlin. I'm applying.
Awesome. Can't wait for that
I've got one
application.
month till the application deadline. I'm getting my app in.